Hello viewers, welcome to the program on Consciousness, Yoga and Indian Psychology. The program relates to BA Psychology Honours second semester. Today we have with us Professor S.K. Kiran Kumar, who is former Professor of Psychology, Mysore University. He will today tell us about how does Indian psychology conceptualize human nature and behavior, how it is different from Western psychology and how important is yoga and consciousness when we talk about Indian psychology. So, now let us hear it from Professor S.K. Kiran Kumar.
Thank you. In this lecture, I have attempted to show how terms consciousness and yoga are understood in modern psychology, how psychology of yoga and yoga psychology differ, difference between ordinary consciousness and pure consciousness. So, let us see how they differ, in what ways we will continue with it. Further, there are certain specific Indian views. They provide a different perspective on human nature and behavior, how they are relevant in contemporary developments in modern psychology or other things we need to discuss, and how the development of Indian psychology helps, because you see that within modern psychology itself, in the last 5 decades, there are certain developments like transpersonal psychology, energy psychology, indigenous psychology and other sub branches coming up, which show that there are many aspects of indigenous traditions from different countries around the world, which can contribute more for understanding human nature and behavior. So, among them the concept of yoga is one which has attracted attention worldwide, and how yoga can enrich our human behavior is another important aspect. Now, when you think of yoga, there are currently practice of asana, pranayama and dhyana is considered as yoga. United Nations declared June 21st as the International Yoga Day, and it is estimated that over 200 million people practice yoga worldwide, and 192 countries participated in the first International Yoga Day in 2015. So, what it shows is that yoga has become ubiquitous, a common word across globe, and researches have been conducted on what the practice of yoga can help or how it can benefit people. And it is found particularly that it gives relief to people suffering from minor disorders such as hypertension and diabetes to major or terminal diseases such as cardiovascular disturbances and cancer. And for common man and medical professionals, now yoga has become an alternative or complementary medicine. But the question is that all there to yoga? Is yoga only for medical benefits? Not really. Yoga also has psychological and spiritual dimensions which we need to understand. Now, we can speak of psychology of yoga and yoga psychology. Scientific research on yoga started towards the end of 1950s, and it has picked up in 1970s and has continued steadily since then. Many studies have been conducted from the perspective of psychodynamics, neuropsychology, cognitive neuroscience, humanistic psychology and transpersonal psychology. So, you see that these studies have shown that physiological, neurophysiological and psychological changes associated with the practice of asana, pranayama and dhyana have immense changes in the people. These researches have been documented, and in all these studies yoga is approached in one of the following ways. a strategy to improve psychomotor abilities and cognitive functions. That means, people become better in memory, attention, concentration, in performance of skills, etc. And as an adjunct to psychotherapy, as a way of relaxing, as a way of relieving stress, or to deal with depression, or to even to deal with a serious illness like schizophrenia. Then as a growth promotion strategy, not only to heal illness, it is also to develop oneself. Humanistic psychologists speak of personal growth, actualization. So, even in that sense, yoga practice is associated. It is found that people who practice yoga regularly develop their psychological abilities, what we call today strengths, and become more creative and more stable, and become personally psychologically more healthy, as health psychology and growth psychology speaks of. Then it is also studied as a way of inducing altered states of consciousness. So, these are the different ways in which yoga has been approached. All of them are from this modern psychological perspective. So, that is why we can call it psychology of yoga. And when it comes to consciousness, you see that modern psychology thinks of three states. One is the waking state, which in Indian tradition we call it Jagrat. Then we have dream, which is called Swapna, and then deep sleep, which is called Sushupti. So, you see that these experiences, we experience an external reality both in waking state and in the dream state. In the waking state, we experience the reality outside our body, whereas in the dream it is a mental phenomena. In deep sleep, we neither have the external experience outside the body nor the mental phenomena. So, these three states, Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti, are what we are familiar with, and modern psychology has focused mostly on these three. We will just think of a way of understanding these three states. You see here, we have the Jagrat, the Swapna and the deep sleep states. You see that these three states are the ones which keep on move one after another. We go into deep sleep, we come out of it, again we dream, we get into deep sleep, again we wake up. So, this is a kind of cycle, we what you call sleep wakeful cycle. So, this goes on and on and on in our day to day life. And what is an altered state of consciousness? It is defined as a qualitative alteration in mental functioning. That means, when we experience an altered state, when we are awake, we can experience altered state through hypnosis or by taking some drugs like marijuana or LSD, or even yoga can also, meditation can also induce altered states. And when a person is in an altered state, a person will experience one or more of the following aspects, like changes in attention, concentration, sensation and perception, emotions and motivation, bodily experience, experience of surroundings, memory and thinking, sense of personal identity. In different ways, we feel different things happening. In dream, for example, we may change our whole body into some animal like figure. That is an alteration in our bodily sense. Or suppose we are sitting in sleeping in our house, and we may feel that we are there far away in some other place. So, these are all different kinds of changes that we can experience in an altered state of consciousness. Now, practice of yoga can also induce altered states, but goal of yoga is not just to induce altered states of consciousness. It is to go beyond all the mental activities to realize some state beyond the ordinary 3 states of consciousness. So, we find in our Indian tradition, we have Vedic tradition, Vedic related traditions and non-Vedic traditions, where we use different terms to refer to these things like Turiya, Dharma, Megha Samadhi, Buddha nature and so on and so forth, all of which represent a state beyond the waking state. And you see that among this, it is Turiya is a word which is used in Upanishad, and many Upanishads use the word Turiya, but particularly you will find the definition of Turiya in Mandukya Upanishad. Now, what is Turiya? In Sanskrit it means fourth. It is not given any name other than just the number fourth to distinguish it from the 3 others which are given the name Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. Why it is done so? Because it does not have any qualities, characteristics, etc., but it is there. See, for example, simply in English we say a transcendent state. Now, for modern psychology students, how I can explain that is, in Gestalt psychology we have 2 terms, figure and ground. Usually in the waking state we become, external reality becomes the figure and we experience from our state of consciousness. But Turiya is a state where even the waking, dream and sleep also become figure, and Turiya is the ground state. So, now this ground state is an experience which is uniquely explained in Indian tradition. Terms may differ, but the significance of it remains the same. So, in the 7th shloka of Mandukya Upanishad, Turiya is explained or described in the following way. It is not inwardly cognitive state, it is not outwardly cognitive state. That means, it is neither some kind of a dreaming condition nor wakeful condition, nor cognitive both wise, which is, it does not mean it is a deep sleep state, and neither it is a indefinite mass of cognition, something like coma where we do not have any experience, that is a indefinite mass, even it is not even that. Nor is it a collective cognitive state, that means you can't say it is a group consciousness phenomena or something, or you can say there is no cognition of any kind. And then what it is said it is unseen, unrelated, inconceivable, uninferable, unimaginable, indescribable, and then it is said it is the essence of the one self cognition common to all states of consciousness. So, and all phenomena cease in it. When a person is only in that Turiya state, there is no experience of any kind, and it is characterized by peace, what is called Shanti. It is bliss, what is called Ananda, and it is non-duality. It is a state of Advaita, what is called. And in this shloka says, this is the self, Atman, and that is to be realized. So, this is the description of Turiya, a best description you can find in any Upanishads. Now, let us see, I had shown you one figure of waking, dream and swapna, deep sleep. Now, if you carefully observe this diagram, there is a background which is indicated by TU, letters TU. You see that background is also white, but in that background the waking, dream and sleep are constantly happening. So, that means this background is the ground state, it is always there, whether you are awake, whether you are dreaming, whether you are asleep, this Turiya is always there, it is the background, and hence it is the ground, and these 3 states are figures. Usually in modern psychology what happens, they do not make a distinction between consciousness and mind, but in the Indian tradition a distinction is made between consciousness and mind, whereas Turiya is considered as a pure consciousness state. Waking, dream and deep sleep are considered as states of mind. So, we have to understand these are all states of mind. Waking is also mental activity, sleep is also mental activity, and even deep sleep is also considered some kind of a mental activity according to Indian tradition. So, this is the essential difference between the understanding of consciousness between modern psychology and Indian tradition, and this is beautifully described in all the different major Upanishads. So, now we will see when you think of consciousness, we have defined it, how yoga is related to consciousness. Now, what is the view of yoga? I have already told that in modern sense contemporarily yoga is limited to practice of asana, pranayama, etc. But within Indian traditions, yoga is seen as a way of living, and it is developed thousands of years ago in ancient India. And yoga is a Sanskrit word meaning union or join, and it is called a state in which all the indriyas are in control level, and Bhagavad Gita states that it is a state which is free from the contact of sorrow in the transmigration, and it is considered by Manusmriti as a tool from which one can realize the subtleness of Paramatma. And another view of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is very important, is it is restraining mind stuff from taking vrittis. That means all mental activity should be controlled. We can consider Patanjali's Yoga Sutra as the best and most authentic text available on yoga, and the first four of them are very important because it says what is yoga? Yoga is the cessation of all the activities of the mind. When everything is completed, see the person who is experiencing is called drashtu, seer. That person's is in full awareness, but when mental activity is going on, that drashtu who is in the background will be part of the activity. So, this idea is the same as what I have already explained about Turiya and the other different states. So, when you think of these two, you see that modern psychology does not speak of a drashtu or a Turiya, but Indian psychology on the foundation of Turiya or drashtu. In course of time, we have spoken about Vedic psychology, Upanishadic psychology, Jaina psychology, Buddhist psychology, and even Dravidian psychology. All these psychologies are founded on the foundation of the distinction between a pure consciousness and states of mind or states of other three avasthas, as they say. And it was Swami Vivekananda who gave lectures in 1900 who first explicitly distinguished between Indian psychology and Western psychology. And others like Aurobindo, Mrs. Rice Davids, Jadunath Sinha, Abhedananda, Mohanlal Mehta and many others followed and gave lot of details about it. If you ask what is Indian psychology, is it a new branch? No. Is it a new movement? No, it is 100 years old. Is it a force like humanistic psychoanalysis, behaviorism? It is more than that, it can subsume all of them. Is it one perspective? No, there are many perspectives. Is it a new paradigm? Yes, because there is a fundamental distinction. Is it relevant now? Yes, it is relevant locally to India to understand our people, the way we behave, and also globally because it is related to transpersonal psychology and other movements. And what research methods can we adopt? We can adopt research methods which are currently practiced like first person, second person and third person research methods. And there is a definition of Indian psychology which says that when we use the word Indian, it does not mean it is locally restricted. It is only to respect the origin of our psychological traditions, which is unique and different. That is the important aspect, and also to draw the philosophy and the conceptual framework and the methods of inquiry Indian thinkers have given to us and making use of it. And Cornelissen, Mishra and Verma, who have published the book Foundations of Indian Psychology, also clarify that when we speak of Indian, we do not localize or limit the scope of this approach to psychology, and it is not psychology as taught at Indian universities, nor is it psychology of people, Indian people, it is applicable to the whole globe. So, that is very important to be remembered. And now, how do we understand the importance of Indian psychology? There is a story of one Mullah Nasruddin, who was a Sufi saint, a wise man from Persia. So, one day he was walking on the street, and a carpet seller was shouting at the top of his voice saying 100 dinars for a carpet. Then Mullah walked towards the carpet merchant, examined the carpet, and it was very exquisite, very expensive, it was very beautiful carpet. So, he asked the carpet seller, why are you selling it for 100 dinars? Then the carpet seller did not know that there is a higher value than 100 dinar. So, he was puzzled, he asked, is there something higher than 100 dinar? I did not know. Then the mullah said, yes, it is more expensive, 100 there is 1000 dinar also. So, similarly what has happened today is modern psychology is operating with the view that there is only 100 dinar, that means that is the only human possibility. But the Indian tradition says there is even 1000 dinar, there is something more. So, this story is narrated by a famous psychologist Robert Ornstein in his book Psychology of Consciousness, to show how modern psychology is limited in its perspective. So, when you think of this, then what is that higher state? I have already said it is Turiya, and another way of putting that state is called Satchidananda, Sat-Chit Ananda. We are all familiar with these three terms. So, Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness, Ananda is bliss. So, people, our rishis, yogis and all who have lived these experiences, they have identified that there are 4 major goals for human existence, what man can consciously choose. One is dharma, another is artha, another is kama, and the last one is moksha. Now, commonly we are familiar with kama and artha, which means all kinds of desires and acquisition of material wealth, etc. And dharma we are aware, which guides our life. But moksha is also we are aware, we speak of it, but what exactly it means? It means freeing ourselves from all the limiting conditions and to experience a transcendent state. Now, this state we can all experience in our daily life. It is not something which is away from the ordinary person. It is, all of us are capable, we have glimpses of that experience, and when we experience a highest state of well-being, and that experience of well-being, because it is very different from the well-being that we ordinarily speak of, it is the word Ananda is used for that. So, when a person is aware of that sense of well-being, then that person has need not actually feel sorrow, worry, anxiety, depression, or even if such emotions come up, a person can get over them because he knows there is something better, something qualitatively different, which is the real meaning of well-being. So, this is how contemporarily it is possible for us to relate Indian psychology to many developments parallelly that is happening in the field of modern psychology. Thank you.
So, Professor Kiran Kumar,
Yeah.
after hearing your lecture, one thing that comes to my mind is that
Yeah.
how do we apply all this? Like we knew about consciousness now, and there are like 4 levels that you talked about, the highest level. So, when we apply it in our daily life, how do we do it?
Yeah, we already, we have been one or the other way we are practicing it, because our Indian tradition, everybody, whether we have understood the psychology behind it or not, daily morning, getting up in the morning, praying and doing some type of worship, puja, or sitting for meditation.
So, does yoga also help in this?
Yoga also help in this, because yoga, daily practicing yoga for some time, you see, will definitely keep us fresh, keep healthy, keep active, and it is a way of getting into that state of well-being. If see, it is like this, you log into internet, right? So, yoga practice is like a password, finding the right password and getting into the internet.
Okay.
So, similarly you can get into that higher state. Every day if you make it a habit, then naturally you may have a glimpse of it. For a few seconds you may experience. That gives the freshness.
Okay.
Actually, it is a kind of a thoughtless state. Momentarily you may experience, but even then you feel fresh. That is the whole idea behind it.
And that feeling will have implications for our day to day life,
Yes,
the way we are
exactly.
functioning, and
because it is a spillover effect.
okay.
Because you feel confident, you feel that there is some kind of we say Atman, right? So, we are accessing that, it is there, but what happens is we forget to access it every day. So, we may feel a sense of loss, but if we are accessing it every day, we feel stabilized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, viewers, today we really got a glimpse of what Indian psychology is all about. Okay. And usually we are aware about 3 levels of consciousness, that we say Jagrata, Swapna and Susupti. But as Professor Kiran Kumar pointed out, there is also a 4th level of consciousness beyond these 3 states, which Indian psychology talks about. And yoga can be the path, the way or the path that can help us in achieving that level of consciousness. Okay. So, thank you so much, Professor Kiran Kumar,
Thank you
for enlightening us about the Indian thoughts in psychology.